Welcome to another edition of It's True. I'm your host, the Truth Seeker, and while I've had to make a few adjustments recently, let's not let that distract us from our next tale. You've probably heard the saying, a debt is never truly paid. But what happens when the debt involves something more precious than money? This story isn't just a cautionary tale. It's proof that promises made in desperation often come with consequences more horrifying than you could ever imagine. Let me tell you about Charlie and Ethan, two childhood friends bound by a deal they'd both come to regret. Charlie had everything: a great job, success, and that polished, confident look of someone who was winning at life. But beneath the surface, something was wrong. The man clutched an expensive pocket watch like it was keeping him tethered to reality, as if time itself was chasing him. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Ethan was panicking. Beer bottles littered the floor of his cramped apartment, and losing sports bets were stacked high on his table. He was drowning in debt again, but this time, he'd messed up worse than usual. A knock at the door. Two men in dark suits entered and threw Ethan against the wall.
50,000 by tomorrow, or you'll be crawling out of here,
they threatened before slamming the door behind them. Desperate, Ethan did what he always did when life spiraled out of control. He called Charlie. The two friends met at a late-night diner. Rain pattered against the windows, drowning out the hum of the city. Ethan was shaking as he explained how deep he was in. Charlie sighed. Disappointment etched across his face. I've bailed you out more times than I can count. You'd promised me you'd stop. I know, Ethan pleaded. Just help me out one last time. I'll owe you anything. That's when Charlie leaned forward. His expression changed. Anything? Ethan nodded without hesitation. Yeah, anything. Charlie pulled out a small knife and placed it on the table. If I do this, we make a deal. One day, I'll come to you for help. No questions asked. And you'll help me, no matter what, right? Without hesitation, Ethan agreed. Charlie cut both their palms, and they shook hands, binding their promise in blood. That night, Charlie paid the loan sharks. They didn't make it easy for him. They roughed him up good, leaving him bloodied and bruised. But he had paid Ethan's debts and made it home. Limping and clutching his pocket watch, its ticking was louder. After the promise, and knowing what Charlie did for him, Ethan cleaned up his life. 5 years later, and he had a stable job, a fiancée named Sarah, and they were planning their wedding. Life was finally good. But one night, there was a knock at the door. Charlie stood there, looking like a ghost of his former self. His once perfectly tailored suit now hung loose on his frame, and his eyes were sunken. I need you to repay the favor, Charlie said. Without hesitation, Ethan invited him inside. Anything you need. I owe you everything. Charlie handed Ethan the same pocket watch and a folded note. Keep this watch tonight. Don't take it off till morning. At 3 minutes to midnight, read the note, but not before. Ethan hesitated, but agreed. Charlie left without another word. That night, Ethan couldn't shake the weight of the watch ticking in his pocket. The sound was louder than it should be, echoing in his mind. Something just felt off. At 11:57 p.m., he finally opened the note, his hands trembling as he read. Ethan, you swore you'd do anything for me. Tonight, I'm asking you to save me one last time. 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. A year ago, it became terminal. I had less than 6 months to live. I was terrified of dying. And that's when I met him. I offered him the thing most important to me, this watch, but he didn't want it. Instead, he wanted a deal. A life for me, but at a cost. He wanted a soul. And it couldn't just be any soul. A life for life. I thought of you, Ethan. I thought of all the times I'd saved you, all the trouble you brought me, and I realized you were perfect. The watch I gave you marks the time until midnight. When it stops, your soul belongs to him. I'm sorry. Ethan's heart raced. He tried to toss the watch, but it burned his skin as he grabbed it. The second hand was ticking down, and when he checked the clock, it was already midnight. Heat exploded from inside him. His skin blistered, and steam rose as hellfire igniting his body. He collapsed to the floor, screaming. Sarah burst into the room but was thrown back by an invisible force. The room shifted. The floor cracked open, revealing a fiery pit. Ethan's screams echoed as flames consumed him. His surroundings blurred until he found himself standing in a scorched wasteland. A towering demon approached, its skin charred, its eyes glowing like embers.
Time to collect.
Chains erupted from the ground, wrapping around Ethan's limbs and dragging him towards the fiery pit. His final scream faded as he was pulled into the depths of hell. Back in the mortal world, Charlie sat at a bar, nursing a glass of whiskey. The bar was festive and lively, but Charlie sat there, completely oblivious to his surroundings. He stared at the lit candle behind the bartender, watching the flames as they burned. I'm sorry. There's always a steep price when you make a deal with the devil. That seemed true for both Charlie and Ethan. But I guess they say, better the devil you know. And with that, we come to the conclusion of this episode of It's True. We hope you enjoyed another twisted tale. If you did, and you want to hear more, remember to please like and subscribe. Every week we drop shorts of demonic and unexplained creations, and each week we bring you another episode of It's True. Until then, I'm the Truth Seeker, signing off. And remember, it's true if you believe it.